Hey friends, in the previous video we learned how to insert values in the database using a post endpoint. In this video we will create an endpoint through which we will return just a single node, finding it by its ID. So let's get started. It will be another get endpoint. So we'll create the endpoint and it will be dash nodes slash, and we will pass the ID in the parameter URL itself. So as we have seen previously, we read the parameter by using call.parameters, and in the square brackets we just pass the same name here that we pass in the URL, and then we can convert this into an integer. And what we will do is that if someone passes a string, so this toInt will be null, so we'll do the Elvis operator here. And if it's a string and toInt comes out to be null, we will assign -1 to the ID. And why we are assigning -1 here is because in our database, the IDs that we have are integer and they are auto increment and they start from 1, so they will always be positive. So if we pass something invalid, a string, then it will change it to -1, and when we try to find it from the database, it will not find that value. So then we will be rather than failing the request, we can just tell the user that we are not able to convert this, or we are not able to find this node with that specified ID. So it's a simpler thing. We can have a special check here as well, telling the user that the ID was invalid, but it's just the simplicity of this thing that I'm trying to do. Rather than having multiple checks, I'm just assigning it -1 here. So then we will try to find the node using the DB. So again, we will do DB from, tell which entity it should be. Then we will do similar to the first get request, we will do select, but here we will add a where condition as well. So where we want to compare the node's entity ID should be equal to ID. So what this equal to is, this comes from KTORM. So it's a KTORM's DSL, which is domain specific language. So KTORM has created its own language on top of Kotlin, which it uses for some of its queries. So in this case, it is using that itself, where EQ is a DSL operator, which means equal to. And then as we did in the first get request, we will map it, and it will be same. We will do ID, which will be nodes entity dot ID, and we will just force unwrap here rather than doing it later on. And then it will be node ID nodes entity dot node, and then we will create a node here with ID equals to ID and node equals to node. And then if there are matches, multiple matches with the same ID, this will eventually become a list here, but in our case we want the first value. So what we will do is first or null. So basically it will find the first match with that ID and assign it. Otherwise, if it doesn't find that ID, it will assign null. So in the next line, what we will do is we will do a null check here. So if node is equal to null, then what we will do is we will return with not found, and similar to the last request, we will attach a node response here with success as false and data as could not found node with that ID, or we'll say with ID equals to ID. And otherwise we will just copy paste. Okay, and in the data we will just send the note that was found. So that this is the benefit of making this note response as generic, the data value here. So we can attach a string, a note object, or anything that we want. So let's try running this and see what happens. So let's go to our postman and let's fetch all the notes first. So we will try to fetch this 11. So you see that, oh sorry, let's update the success to true. Let's rerun. But you saw that it was able to find it and show it on the postman. So let's search it. 1. So it's showing the note in the data and success is true. We can do 10 and it says get an appointment at the bank. And when we say 101, it says couldn't find node with ID 101 and success equals to false. So that's how you search the database using KTORM and have checks whether you got the result or not. In the next video, we will learn how to delete a node and then update a node. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.